I'm Dr. Carly Dawson, the trauma educator. And today I want to talk to you about trauma, what it is, what it's not, and why your voice matters. People throw around the word trauma, traumatization, traumatic very loosely. And they often think, that there's something extreme, violence, abuse, disaster, tragedy. Well, really, trauma can include those experiences, but it's also, that's not by itself. Trauma itself is not the event. Trauma is the impact, the experience of those events on our nervous system. Is when our nervous system is overwhelmed, you know, to a person's ability to be able to cope, process, or make meaning out of things, especially when support and safety or voice is absent. Trauma is really what happens inside you as a result of what happened outside you. And that distinction really matters. Trauma is not defined by how big or how small something looks from the outside. It's defined by how your body and your brain experiences threat, loss, or helplessness. In a traumatic situation, we lose the freedom to choose a response, and instead, we just react. Two people can really see the same event differently. One can come through feeling shaken but recovered, and the other can carry that experience in their bodies for years, if not a lifetime. The difference is the capacity that they have, the context that is in, and the connections that they have. And let me break those down for you. Capacity is about how much a person's system, body, can hold at a given moment. And capacity is shaped by five things. One, age and developmental stage that they're at. Two, prior stress or trauma that they've experienced. Three, physical health and sleep or lack thereof. Four, their emotional regulation skills that they have. And five, their nervous system's load at that particular time. I have a friend who has a nephew who came to Phoenix, Arizona area from Detroit, Michigan area. And he had some run-ins with the police, came down here to have a fresh start. And boys all decided they were going to go out to a party. And when they went out to this party, the music got a little loud, and so as a result, neighbors called the police and police came. And as they saw them approaching, somebody yelled out, "Popo, Popo." And this young man got up they were all sitting outside, and he got up and started running as fast and hard as he can to get away from the situation. Well, you know what the police did? They saw him and they took off after him because they figured he's running, something, he must have done something wrong. And they caught up with him and, of course, put him in jail. Amazingly, the young man hadn't done anything. He didn't do anything. He was just outside sitting down with a bunch of other boys. The thing is this, all those boys sat there except for him. He jumped up and ran. Why? Well, could it have been that his nervous system overloaded at that time? Could it have been that his capacity was full and his prior experiences had an impact on what he was experiencing at this moment? Well, this family was out of some money because he had to be, was taken out of jail, but it was at a cost. But he didn't do anything. But his brain didn't know that. No, his brain didn't know it. His brain thought it was keeping him safe by having him run away. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. But the good thing about it is that he wasn't hurt. Well, emotionally, and all that, but he wasn't hurt physically because it could have been a very different situation. So when it comes to capacity, a child basically has less capacity than an adult. An exhausted adult has less capacity than a rested one. Someone already carrying stress has less capacity than someone who is not. So trauma is more likely when the demand exceeds the system's current capacity, system meaning your body, the current capacity. And this is not weakness, this is biology. Context. That refers to the conditions surrounding the experience. The same event feels very different depending on four things. One, whether it was expected or sudden. Two, whether there was choice or control. Three, whether there was an escape possible. And four, whether the environment felt safe or threatening. Was this expected? Police weren't expected. He was out there talking, having fun. Was it choice or control? They came, all of us, they were just there. Was there escape possible? Mm-hmm. Run, Forrest, run. And whether the environment felt safe or threatening, it obviously felt threatening. Let's look at another example. Being physically violated. That can be unexpected and sudden. You have no choice or control in the situation. Escape is not possible, and the environment still is threatening. Or think about discipline. Discipline. Now, when you are disciplined and you have a predictable, loving relationship, is different from discipline in a chaotic or frightening relationship. Think about that next time you discipline and how you discipline. And the context, let's talk about that. That shapes meaning, and meaning shapes impact. And lastly, connection. This is often the most protective factor that we have here because connection includes being believed. In this violation, are you being believed? Are you being comforted? Are you being protected? And has someone tried to make sense of what happened? Unfortunately, research shows that supportive relationships that, well, it buffers stress and reduces the likelihood that the experience becomes traumatic, which is a good thing. When connection is present, the nervous system can regulate. When you're believed, when you're comforted, when you're protected, and when somebody can help you make sense of what happened, it helps you stay regulated. And when connection is absent, the system then, well, it goes right into survival mode. So, two people can go through the same experience and be impacted very differently. The difference is not how strong they are. The difference is whether their system had the capacity to handle what was going on, whether the context felt safe and controllable, and whether they had a connection during or after the experience. So trauma is more likely when stress happens in isolation. Trauma often shows up not as a memory, but it shows up as hypervigilance, emotional numbness, chronic tension, overfunctioning, and difficulty trusting oneself as well as others. So, stressful situations like divorce, jobs, illness, conflict, disappointment, they're part of being human. They can be very painful, exhausting, and deeply impactful without becoming traumatic. The key difference is this: challenges stretch us, but trauma overwhelms us. Challenges may hurt, but it still allows choice, it still allows agency, it still allows voice and recovery. But trauma disrupts those things. So we don't honor trauma by calling everything trauma. We honor trauma by understanding when and why systems become overwhelmed. So trauma is not just what happened to you, trauma is what happened inside you when what happened to you was too much, too fast, or too isolating. And sometimes the most traumatic part of an experience is not the event itself. Mm-mm. You know what it is? Not being believed, not being protected, not being able to speak, not being able to leave, and not being able to make sense of it all. When someone's authentic voice is consistently dismissed, minimized, or overridden, especially in childhood or in systems of power, the nervous system learns a real dangerous lesson. It is not safe to be fully seen or heard. And over time, that silencing can shape how a person relates to authority, how they trust their instincts, how they set boundaries, how they experience their own emotions. And yes, chronic loss of voice can be traumatic, particularly when it's tied to identity, power, or survival. Now, this doesn't mean every moment of not being heard is trauma. It means that persistent relational silencing can leave a lasting imprint. I remember as a little girl in an attempt of being violated. It was my voice that saved me. That little weak voice that I had, it saved me. That voice that spoke and said, I'm going to tell. That individual got up, ran away from me because I said, I'm going to tell. I didn't know the power of my voice then. I come to grow into it. When we make space for authentic voice, when people are heard, when people are believed and supported, we don't just mitigate trauma, we can prevent it. That's when we start to create conditions for healing. Understanding trauma this way does two important things. It prevents us from reducing trauma to a checklist of events, and it helps us from blaming people for how they adapted. Many behaviors we judge, we say that is withdrawal, control, perfectionism, people pleasing. These are not signs of weakness. They're signs of a system that has learned how to survive. And oh, we know how to survive. What's happening now? We know how to survive. So, in closing, there are three clarifying truths. Trauma is not defined by the event, but by the body's response to that event. What matters is whether the nervous system felt overwhelmed, threatened, or helpless, and whether it was able to return to a sense of safety after it happened. Two, not every difficult or painful experience is trauma. Hard experiences can be stressful, upsetting, or life-changing without becoming traumatic. When there is support, choice, meaning, and recovery, the nervous system can process the experience without remaining stuck in survival mode. And three, trauma develops when stress occurs without enough capacity, context, or connection. Okay? Trauma develops when stress occurs without enough capacity, context, or connection. Trauma is more likely when the experience exceeds what a person can handle at any given moment, feels unsafe or uncontrollable, and it happens in isolation without protection, voice, or support. So trauma is not about being broken. It's about what the body learned in the absence of safety, support, and voice. Thank you. I'm Dr. Carly Ann Dawson, the trauma educator.